Welcome back to the Road to the Trials. This episode is pretty special. It's with 2016 Olympian Jared Ward. He finished 6th place in that race and got made fun of on the broadcast for being one of the most excited 6th place finishers of all time. We ask him about that, get into what it meant, what it took to get to the Olympics, and ultimately the cost of putting that much effort into a race of that at that stage. Big shout out to VDOT, the coaching platform, sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can check them out at v.o2.com and in the link in our show notes. They're a great resource for coaches, for athletes, and a way to connect and improve as a team. Check them out. Now let's get into it.
All right, friends. Well, we are so excited here for another episode of Road to the Trials 2028 for the LA Olympics, the Olympic trials leading up to the LA Olympics. An exciting time because the Olympics are going to be in the United States in 2028. We have a really exciting guest today who is an Olympian himself, and I would say someone that a lot of these runners are really looking up to. A lot of the people that we are going to have on this series are going to look at the one and only Jared Ward for some wisdom and advice. Welcome to the show, Jared.
It is so good to be here. It's my treat to be here with you guys, and this is going to be fun. I'm excited to chat. I'm also excited for the 28 trials. I'm excited for everyone who has aspirations now and that's locked and loaded. What a cool time, huh?
So cool. And I'm Lindsay Hine, joined with my co-host today, Peter Bromka, as well.
Hey.
How's it going, Peter?
It's going well. I'm excited. I have, Jared, I followed your career closely over many years and many high points, so I'm just geeking out to ask you about some moments throughout, and even leading up to, I hope to eventually we can get to what it's been like to be part of this YouTube series. You're on YouTube quite a bit now with your training partners, and I'm curious what that's been like.
Oh man, so much has happened in Utah. In the 10 or 15 years since I began to happen in Utah, and so it's been really, really fun to see what's materialized sort of around us here, and to be a part of, Clayton and Connor and Kenny and James and Whitney and and the list, just Courtney and Grant, and it just keeps going on. And so it's been a pretty fun to watch all of that happen around us.
You just moved back to the United States.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that adventure.
So my wife and I did something crazy with our 6 kids, and we moved to the UK so that I could go back to school, because I'm a nerd and I love school. And if we rewind the clock 10 years on the Jared Ward life, I was looking at PhD programs in statistics, and it was Erica who convinced me to take a year off of school after my master's degree at BYU and just run and see what happens. And in that year off was 2016, and I made an Olympic team. And so I never went back to school. I just kept running. But I've continued to do academic research with Ian Hunter in the exercise science department at BYU, and in a few other, in some cross collaborative projects with some other people, mostly in running related stuff. I taught for a while, and I love academics. And so still in the back of my mind, I was going to get that PhD, but a PhD didn't make a lot of sense for our family right now, and so I went for the lower hanging fruit of an MBA. But we did the crazy MBA, and we went over to the UK, and we had a great experience. It was a good year for our family. I think it was a stretching year. Eric and I would talk about how we wanted to stretch our kids but not break them. And I think we did that. But the kids are excited to be back. We love the States. We love Utah. It's been really good to be home.
What was running like for you over there? At what level were you running while you were over there?
Not a lot. In fact, I've been back in Utah for 12 days now, and my legs are sore because I tried to keep up with the guys yesterday on one of Coach Eyestone's favorite workouts, which means that for most of us,
which
it's
is
one
what?
of our. Well, so he calls it fatigued mile repeats. Doesn't it just sound dreamy?
Yeah. What makes them fatigued? What are you doing?
Well, you do essentially like a power run or, a kind of a light tempo, and then you finish at the track and you go straight into interval mile repeats. So for someone like, Clayton or Connor or, yesterday Casey Klinger was running really well, it means, in between 5-minute and 5:20 pace for 8 or 9 or 10 miles, followed by 3 or 4 miles at about 4:20 or under. And so it's moving. And so I got back and I did that workout, and that's the hardest I've gone in probably a year. But I did run in the UK and I had a lot of fun. I was studying at Oxford, and the British athletics system, the equivalent of, or I guess the university system in British athletics, is very different from the NCAA in terms of how they regulate participation. And so anybody can run on the university team as long as you're a student. And so I spent the last year of my life feeling like I was back in college and back on the team.
That workout sounds brutal, and I'm proud of you for just jumping right back in.
It's good to be back with these guys. Brutal is still rewarding. And I've had some workouts over the last year. I've been training with the Oxford University cross-country squad, and that's been fun.
Oh, cool.
I've even been competing with them because the rules are different over there. So a little piece of me has felt like I've been back in college again, and so it's been fun. You said, what has the last year been like? It's been like training at a fraction of the intensity, but it's been really fun and really rewarding, and has left more time for some other things. And I've come back excited to try going hard again, seeing if my body can keep up.
Do you have a moment when you think back of like, that's when I was training my hardest? Like, is there like one wedge of time you're like, wow?
Yeah, I was, there's a couple, going into, post 2016 trials and pre 2016 Olympics, I was training really hard. We had 2 kids, and we were doing sort of budget high altitude training. So we were in Park City for phases, and we were kind of moving around, and I was trying to be close enough to BYU to teach, but also up at altitude. And so we were sort of juggling it, but I was running really hard. And in fact, I was running injured, but sort of some injuries that I could run through that I didn't pay for until after the Olympics. So that was a time that I was training really hard. And then there was another time, probably 2019, after we moved to the house we live in now, and we had 4 kids. In fact, we had a baby, and I was doing a lot of my training on a treadmill because we had an unfinished basement, and I could take all my kids downstairs and they could go crazy in the basement. I think I remember this,
yes.
And mom could do baby, right? I could do the kids while I'm on a treadmill at 5-minute pace, and the kids can run around the basement. And so there were some times when those 2 times I was training hard. And I think the first time, the hardest training was my workout. So I was having workout PRs. And then the second time, my hard training was that I wasn't working out as hard because I was working out with people, but they weren't as fast as me. And so I was sort of getting my extra in on my easy days. And so that was a phase of training where I wasn't really having easy days. I was going hard-ish every day. And so that was a different style of training. But I really wanted to train with training partners, and I wanted to use them for the workouts and be helpful in the workouts. And so anyway, two times where one ended in injury and one ended in some sort of fake sense of fitness that didn't translate into results. And so I think when I think of the times where I've been training the hardest, they're not necessarily the times that I've been the healthiest or had the best results. Those don't always correlate as much as we think.
Interesting.
Okay, I'm interested in this though, because I actually think when I was running my fastest, I was doing that. You know how everybody says you got to run easy on your easy days, right? So that you have it in you to go hard on your hard days. But there was a time where I was running hardish on my easy days, and I knew I shouldn't have been, but I did anyway. But man, I was so freaking fit. And so I'm curious, like, it sounds like you are running really well doing that, but like that's not necessarily something we hear people recommend. Is it just like biding your time? Like eventually you're going to get injured doing that? Tell me what you think about that way of training.
Yeah, I think you're doing a little bit of cashing out short-term gains at the expense of long-term success, both in terms of injury and in terms of burnout. And I do think that you can train really hard for a little bit and get good results, but you probably can't train really hard and race often really hard and get really good results. And you probably, and you can't do it even without racing for very long. And so I just think we sometimes, and it's natural to become myopic in our approach because we're looking at these goals that are right in front of us and we're driven to achieve these goals. But I wish that when I was younger, I had a little bit more of the mindset that my job as an athlete was to increase my adaptations, my body's adaptations, and I wished I looked at it through those lenses, because you can create very short-term adaptations, and you notice this in training cycles where you hit a couple hard workouts, you hit speed and you're running faster, and if you want to be running tempos faster next week, then do a little speed this week and you'll get there. But it's a different way to get there than through strength, which is what tempos are built to improve. And so I don't know, I guess I just think that when I look at it, training as a philosophy now, I think 10 years ago I looked at it like, hey, you run a really hard workout, you have a workout PR, and you're on the right track. And now I look at it like, how is my body making adaptations? Is this sustainable? Am I cashing out of next year by what I'm doing right now? Am I cashing out of decades down the line of what I'm doing now? Or am I building foundation and making adaptations that are actually going to translate to fitness? And so I look at training a lot more like the workout is the stimulus, and now it's my job after the workout to go home and make sure that stimulus translates to an adaptation.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yes. That
Brilliant.
is more than most runners ever think about, I think. Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of nerdy, Peter.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, but it's just this whole idea. Luckily I feel like it's become more of a part of the conversation, like why we're doing any of this in training. But that's a wonderful way to describe it. And also I just want to pour one out for all the people who use their basement treadmill as an excuse for why they couldn't get in good training. Jared Ward just told you, sorry, that excuse doesn't hold any water.
Not an excuse. Hey, it's raining outside. You got access to a treadmill. Not an excuse.
Here we go.
I ran my marathon PR in Boston 2019, and I was probably doing 50 miles a week on a treadmill. So
50 of like what, 100?
Maybe 110, 120, but yeah.
Okay, so about half of your mileage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I was curious because this is the road to the trials. We're totally hyped on the Olympic Trials Marathon. So you come to the marathon, and you're U.S. marathon champion in 2014 and 2015, from what I recall. Is that correct?
So I was second in 2014 to Tyler Pinnell. And then I won in 2015 when it was in LA. Okay.
In LA. And so then going into the LA trials, which was seemingly like very dramatic for a bunch of reasons. Like, what was your mindset? That was your first trials marathon, correct?
Yeah, it was my first trials. It was my first trials generally. I hadn't qualified for any track trials. I was excited, and I was in a good place because I think I felt that the trials were an opportunity, but expectations were low for me. I was fortunate to be a part of the conversation, and it was good for sponsorship and earning potential and things like that, but I wasn't expected to make the team. And so I don't know, I took my one experience that I had, Peter, maybe you'll enjoy this, is one day, I'm a statistician, so I'm a little nerdy in my approach to training and racing, but I took my list of everybody that I thought could make the team, and I assigned percentage chances of making the team to every person
No.
that I thought had a reasonable chance.
I love this.
Can we get
And I don't-
access to this list? That is so fun.
I don't know. Maybe we should make another one for 2028 as we get a little closer. Let's
Do
see.
it.
Yeah, seriously.
But
I'm just
no,
picturing you standing there being like, okay, Mr. 7.2%. Like, you seem pretty high on your britches.
That's what it turned into. Is when I started this race, right, and it was hot in LA, and it was kind of crazy conditions, and the race was started late because NBC likes races when people will watch it, not when it's nice for runners.
Yeah.
And so we're doing all these things, and these things that are different that I've never done before. But this race to me was literally like I was in some sort of Mario Kart game, but the bubbles above people's heads, they were not their names, they were percentage chances of making the team. So when someone takes off and I'm like, your bubble says 1, like,
Yeah.
I'll see you in a minute. And but when people
Yeah.
move and their bubble says 50%, I'm like, well, I better respond. And I don't like going too far down this rabbit hole. You make more enemies than friends when you start assigning percentages to your friends. But I gave myself a 35% chance of making the team. So that's where my brain was.
Wow. Well, you had mentioned too that like your wife Erica had kind of like encouraged you to take this time to like really focus on the trials and maybe making that team, and it sounds like you kind of paused some other things in your life to be there. Did you feel any sort of like heavy weight, like, okay, I've paused these other aspects of my life so that I can kind of go all in per se? And when I say go all in, I mean like you already mentioned you had 2 kids at home too, like your life was full. But yeah, how did that feel to be like, I'm taking this path now?
You know, I never felt I'm pretty, I'm very fortunate, like, and Erica's fantastic. I never felt pressure for it to become anything. Like, it didn't have to be our moneymaker. She didn't, in fact, she doesn't even like any of the attention that comes associated with Olympics or involvement that way. And so she's very much just supportive and smiley. And, when I talk to my friends now that are, professional athletes and trying to make money doing this and then juggle family and profession and how this is going, it's like some find it ironic that Erica really never even knew, if I won a race, she didn't know how much money we just made. She, when I was selecting marathons and where to go, she didn't care how much money it was. It was like, well, what are you excited about? What's going to be good for our family? And in terms of experiences. And so I think maybe we've been fortunate that we haven't had to live a life where we've been stressed to have enough money to eat, and and things change quickly when there are urgent priorities. But this was never something to Erica that had to be career enabling or money making. It was just about having fun and having an experience. And so I always felt like I had her support and her excitement, but never her pressure. And Erica's a certified massage therapist, and so she was always ready to help me when I needed it.
Ooh, nice.
That's helpful.
That's such a
It's a
good
good
setup.
life. Anyone,
It's a
I
good
recommend
life.
to anyone to send your spouse to massage therapy school. It's good.
Oh yeah. Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. On-demand massage. What about the Olympic trials feels important and special to you as an athlete?
Oh man, it just has so many memories. I remember being asked after the 2016 Olympic cycle by a reporter when I got home, as we were sort of hacking through all these sacrifices that Erica and my kids had made, and how we'd sort of strapped together budget-friendly altitude training, and we'd put all these other things on hold. And the question I got was, so was it worth it? And I had to think about that, because I wasn't ignorant to the reality that in 20 years it's going to be me and Erica and my mom that remember that I went to the Olympics, and the world moves on. And so I had to think about it for a while, but to me, what made it all worth it was some of what I had become in the process of chasing that dream. And it included both experiences in the trials and in the games in LA, things that I learned about myself, how I was deeply motivated, and what got me through some tough races and some tough places and some tough races. And so that's what made it worth it to me. And so when I reflect on Olympic experience and Olympic trials, I think of some of the hardest races that I had ever run in my life. And you want to talk about pressure. Pressure is pulling on that Team USA jersey next to Galen Rupp and next to Meb Keflezighi and thinking, do I belong here? But yet I'm wearing Team USA just like they are. And how to manage that pressure. And so I really do feel like when I think of on these experiences, I just I smile at some of the scenes that I was able to be a part of, some of the people that I was able to get to know, and what I became in the process, what it did to me. And I'll be forever changed and grateful for that.
Can you give everybody a picture from the 2016 trials when that 35%er Jared Ward knows or feels that, like, I'm going to take third here? Like, where were you in the race?
You want to know when my probability updated?
Yes.
There's going to be a test after this interview. I'm worried.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so I can tell you when it went down and then when it went back up. So at about 16 miles into the race, it was hot. And we were all dehydrated. And Tyler Pinnell goes from running about 5 minutes and 5 seconds per mile to 4:40 per mile. He takes off. Do you remember this?
I recall this. I was watching on TV, and we were like, I mean, it could work. Like, he must be really good. Yeah, we'd all
really
run
fast.
We'd all run marathons. We were like, I recall what it feels like to feel good at 16. Like, it doesn't always pan out, but this is exciting.
Well, and he, and it was only Tyler's second marathon, and for sure I was thinking about that in the race. But Tyler's bubble said 20%, and I felt like, Tyler was a force to be reckoned with. So in 2014, when I ran the U.S. Championships, he was the person who won. So, and at 6 miles, he took off, and I thought, nah, it's too early. And then he won the race, and I finished second. I never saw him again. So the last time, in my experience, that Tyler took off, he means it. And two people went with Tyler. Meb went with Tyler, and Rupp went with Tyler. So at this point in the race, I was faced with this dilemma. So I was kind of, after a little bit of shuffling, and there was a few miles shuffling, Shadrach Biwat was up there, and a few others were moving around, and Luke Peskedra was near me, but then after the dust settles, it's Tyler, Meb, and Galen, and then it's me by myself, and then the pack, and I'm in fourth. And I was just like, I was struggling to know what to do, because the realist in me, and I am a realist, even though I'm quite optimistic, I'm still a realist. The realist in me was like, I can't run 440 miles in 70-degree heat, and I'm already dehydrated. I didn't train for this, and these conditions are tough. But the optimist in me was saying, but do you do anything else at the trials? Like, we're racing for top 3 to make the team, so it feels like letting that go, even if there's only a sliver of a chance, that I should make this move. And I sort of reconciled with this for a little while, and so I started thinking about, okay, is Tyler going to come back? And I said, no, last time he did this, it was a good move, and he won the race. Is Meb going to come back? I was like, I don't know, he's 39 years old, he might die, but probably Meb's not coming back.
Yeah.
Meb's won the Boston Marathon, won the New York Marathon. He's silver medalist in the Athens Olympics in 2004. He's 3-time Olympian. He's probably America's best marathoner of all time. And so probably Meb's not coming back. And then there's Galen. And it was Galen's first marathon, but everybody knew Galen was going to be good when he decided to move to the marathon. Coached by a former world record holder, probably America's best track distance athlete ever, certainly at that time. And, and so as I thought about other people, as I thought about these three who had moved, it did not make me feel any better about running a smart race because they were good. But it wasn't until I recognized that the best thing I could do for my race was to get to the finish line as fast as possible. And sometimes that means going with a pack and drafting off a pack. And sometimes that means taking advantage of the synergies around you. And sometimes it means running the pace that I'm prepared to run for the last 10 miles of the race. And in this case, I felt like the best thing I can do is run 5-minute pace, because that's what I've trained for, and just hope that I can make it 10 more miles in this heat at 5-minute pace. So that's what I did. And I felt a little bit better because I was able to sort of have this experience with myself where I reconciled this idea that if I ran my best race and finished 4th at the Olympic trials, I was going to be okay with it. And that was so liberating to come back to me. What can I control, and how can I get the best out of me? And so then we kept running, and eventually Tyler Pinnell started to come back, and I started to get excited, and I passed him, and I passed him right at the loop where, so it was a looped course, and it was right through the finish line area, so there was a ton of energy, and I came away from that just feeling so good. And I just moved into 3rd, and this was going to be the best race of my life, and I liked my chances. And then 3 miles later, with 3 miles to go in a marathon, I was hitting my wall, and I had to get around another wall. And so, you talk about these, the ebbs and flows of a marathon. It's not just one time where you switch from, hey, I have a 35% chance to, hey, I have a pretty good chance of making this team. You have to fight that over and over again as you negotiate a really tough distance, and in that sense it's a lot like life. And so I'm grateful for those experiences in that race that sort of taught me how to get through hard things that felt out of my control sometimes, and hard things that were totally in my control, because both can be tough.
Man, oh man, that's so exciting. I mean, I recall this, it's all coming back to me sitting in the living room watching this race, because both you and Des at some point were sitting in that 3rd, 4th place, and both of you are known for that resolve, like to the self-confidence to run your own race, to not necessarily, and have it pay off in ways so people start betting on you over time. I'm curious, you've already touched on how hard you worked leading up to 2016, and I'm intrigued by this idea of like short-term gains with long-term ramifications, because like, darn it if you didn't knock that Rio marathon, in my mind, out of the park. So, like...
Oh my gosh, 6th place.
Yeah, like, what... Is there a moment where you're like, is that felt by design? I know you're a statistician, or was it, like, out-of-body experience of, like, I think I'm in the top 10 at the Olympic marathon? Like, what... Just to fast forward to that moment.
Well, I can tell you it was pretty cool. And it was cool enough to me that... The U.S. media made fun of me for being the most excited 6th place finisher they'd ever seen at the Olympics.
I remember that. And you're like,
I remember that
quiet,
too.
guys.
Yours truly.
I love it. I remember that too.
But I was very excited, and I entered that race feeling like I didn't really belong, and exited that race feeling like I did belong. And so that was a sense of kind of growth that happened during that race. But it's tough. You make an Olympic team, and then you have 6 months of crazy attention. You're scrutinized more than you've ever been scrutinized before from all angles. And maybe even more so from like friends and family who are now excited to be along on this ride of this person that they're very attached to, that's going to have this amazing experience. And I don't know how many times I was asked what my goal was for the Olympics, but it's a loaded question, because when you ask someone what their goal is for the Olympics, you already know what you want to hear. And and it's tough. And it was tough for me, who's a realist, to say, oh, hey, my goal is to bring to medal, like, because I know what that means. I know the 4 Kenyan athletes that I'm going to be racing against, and the 3 Ethiopian athletes, and like so many incredible athletes from East Africa and from all over the world. And I was third on the U.S. team, and so I trained really hard, but I really struggled with this component of how do I set the right goal that's motivating to get me going, to get the most out of me. And it wasn't until a month before for the games that we finished a good session, and Coach Eyestone said, Jared, I think you can finish top 10. And that hit me in a way that nothing else had hit me for the Olympics, because there was sort of this, like, I was toggling between, just say, hey, I'm going to swing for a medal, even though it doesn't feel realistic, or I'm just happy to be there. And there was like, there's so much in between that, and not a lot that, that it seems that anybody else cares about in the middle. And but that hit me, and I thought, hey, I do believe that I could be top 10, because I've had a good training block, and half the people haven't had a good training block, and some are overcooked, and so I play this odds game and think, hey, maybe I could whittle my way into the top 10. So that became my goal, and it was a compelling and exciting goal. It did continue to push me. So we talked about breaking at the Olympics. I didn't know it at the time, but when I ran in Rio, I had a pelvis that had stress fractures all over, and it hurt, but it's my pelvis, and so there's a lot holding your pelvis together. When I'd go out for a run, my form would look funny for a little while until I got kind of warmed up and moving, and then I could move really well because I was fit. The engine was really good, and I sort of just ignored that my pelvis hurt because I didn't want someone to tell me to stop running. I was headed to the Olympics, and so I just continued to chug along. So after the Olympics, I remember after that race not being able to go up or down stairs because just that, like, shifting my pelvis weight and then using and engaging to go up a stair, I just couldn't do it. And so after I came home, I did all the right things and got all the right imaging, and then began to understand the scope of what had happened. But it did take me probably 2 years to get back to where I was at that race after trying to recover from that injury. And up until the 2016 Olympics, I had never had a season in my life that wasn't better than the season before it. And that counts all the way back into high school. I improved every season. And so much of that was trying to stay as healthy as I could and making adjustments as soon as there was an injury to make sure it wasn't a long-term injury. And the Olympics was the first time I shortchanged my health for a potential outcome. Now, you asked me, Peter, or you sort of asked, do you trade that, right? And I think probably not. I think I probably don't trade that, and I'm grateful to have had the experience that I had. But there's a cost. There's a cost to making that trade, and that cost came out of the next 2 years. But it's very likely that some of that cost came out of the decade that has followed since that games. And so, you have to think long term, and athletes generally are not very good at that.
I'm so impressed because, well, I didn't really know that story. Was just following with all the fandom, but I think it relates to a lot of the people who will be listening to this, who are aspiring to make the trials, who are aspiring, it's that ironic thing of when a marathoner is like, I'm going to try my hardest for this build, and you're like, whoa, what does that mean? Like, by definition, training for marathon, it's easy to overserve yourself. It's easy to go to that buffet bar too many times, and like you're saying, X number of professional athletes will come into the race totally cooked. So I'm like curious about that psychology from your perspective of knowing overcooking yourself is just really quite easy to do. It's like well-meaning athletes do it all the time.
None of us want to think that it's going to happen to us, right? We're going to train really hard and we're going to have the race of our life, but the more you gamble into that hard training, the more likely it is that you can't come out of that hole. And that's why I think it's so critical that we think about training through this lens of stimulation. the training, we finish a really tough workout. I watched some guys yesterday have a killer workout, and we have a tendency to have a killer workout and think, I'm getting fit. And I want to say, guess what? You just got broken. Your body literally just broke down. You've torn your muscles. You're broken. And now you get to give your body the chance to build back stronger. But you don't build back stronger if you continue to break your body down at that level over and over and over again without adequate time in the middle to make those adaptations. And so I think reframing getting fitter through the lens of recovering better works really well for an athlete that's already swinging for the fences and really hitting that stimulus. And so there's certainly some of us out there that sometimes could use a coach there to give us a kick in the pants and say, hey, it's time to create a stimulus, right? And I don't want to shortchange that, but I think that most of the time, for those of us that are training at an Olympic trials caliber level, we stand to benefit more by taking a step back and saying, hey, how can I now soak in this fitness?
Gotcha. I'm hijacking this question. I'm going to attribute you some of the credit for your buddies Connor and Clayton, this crazy steady run they've had. I'm like, didn't they just run the Olympics? Didn't they just run New York? Didn't they just run Boston? But they seem to be keeping it in the acceptable zone of stress, adapt, recover, go again. It's been fun for me to see you as part of some of those videos and imparting words to America's two top marathoners at the moment. I'm curious what that's been like and what advice you give them.
Well, I think one thing is clear, and that that is, in this training group, it's about time for me to stop giving advice and for me to start taking it, because these guys are doing so many things so well.
I don't know, man. They're doing all the modern things, but it's still within the context of showing up, and you're like, are you ever like, hey, what was your place in Paris? Oh yeah, that's what I thought.
I've not done that.
I wouldn't think you would. That would be me, and I wouldn't make it there.
No, they those guys are they're really they're incredible, thoughtful runners. They're both very different. They approach training and rest and recovery different, but they both do emphasize sort of making these adaptations, and they're inspiring to watch. Clayton did say, I gave Clayton a big hug right after the Paris games. We were out there in Paris because my kids said, we just want to watch the boys. And so Erica and I caved and took the whole family out to Paris. But I gave Clayton a big hug at the finish line, and he sort of broke the hug, and he goes, Jared, 6th place is really hard. And
it takes the closer you get to something, more you can appreciate it.
But we have a great relationship. I have a really, really great relationship with both those guys, and certainly me and my family have been blessed by them.
Road to the Trials is supported by V.O2. This is the best training platform out there for coaches and runners. Whether you're coaching hundreds of runners or 5 runners or a dozen runners, this platform is versatile for all types of coaches. It is so simple to use. It has simplified my coaching experience, and I know you're going to love it once you try it out. Created by the great Jack Daniels, the formula they use is created by him, and it is one of the best training systems out there. Go to v.o2.com to learn more. Thank you so much to v.o2 for supporting Road to the Trials and believing in the work we're doing here.
But also, just to finish this thought, I had known of Ed Eyestone, obviously, known of his track record, but now I feel like I have his sort of tone embedded in my mind of being easy, at the track, to you guys, easy, which maybe is something every marathoner needs to hear. What's it been like having him as your coach for this duration?
Well, so that if you talk to people who knew Coach Eyestone back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when he was racing, they all call him Eddie Eyestone. So his nickname in the 80s was Eddie. His nickname among among his athletes is Easy E. And he really is Easy E. I think he very much views his job as a coach at keeping good athletes reined in and saving it for race day. And I think he puts a lot of effort into trying to keep athletes healthy and trying to keep us undertrained as opposed to overtrained. And he also is not, overly involved. And I think, when you first come into contact with Coach Eyestone as a freshman at BYU and begin to be trained by him, I think there's a tendency to some that had very active, involved coaches in high school to think Coach is not very involved. And I remember in college there were times when I would just see him twice a week, and or even maybe potentially less. And there's a little bit more connectivity now, and there's a better assistant coach. And Coach Wade is awesome, and so there's a little bit more involvement, I think, now. But I think that this sort of where Coach was back just far enough, but he's always there to nudge. He's always there to kind of nudge us in the right direction. But I think he gives athletes that space to be able to figure out who we are and how we respond to training and stimulus to training. And if you're overly involved in coaching an athlete, then it works really, really well if you're always going to be there for that athlete and you're always going to be the coach, and yours is a system that works well for them. But one thing that works really well in the Ed Eyestone system, I think, is that Connor gets to figure out what works out for Connor, and he has just enough latitude within a system to figure that out. Clayton gets to figure out what works for Clayton, and Jared gets to figure out what works for Jared. And I think Coach is always there, and his advice is on point. And he's more involved than I think sometimes we give Easy E credit for being involved. I remember times when he'd write up some easy workout for me, and I would think, come on, Coach, I'm in the middle of marathon training. And then I'd head out to do the workout, and I'd find after I started that I'm exhausted, and Coach already knew that. And so he really is, he's quite thoughtful, and he's quite fatherly. Ed's a dad of 6 daughters, and so he knows how to love, and we've certainly benefited from Coach Eyestone.
I want to know Coach Eyestone. I want to live down the street from him.
He's a good person. I think fortunately, he's just started coaching professional women too, and so he's got this growing group here of women, and that's not some, he hasn't coached women in college or really pro women, and I think he's absolutely loving it. I think I think it's a wonderful blessing for those that want to be coached by him.
I saw him on the infield at Portland Track Festival last summer, and that was when the YouTube stuff was just getting going. I said, Coach, I just want you to know, many of us appreciate your willingness to participate. It'd be easy for someone who hasn't done that to be like, no thanks, I'm out of here, like, you can film after I'm gone, but like it adds a lot. And he's like, well, they don't get too much in the way, so I'm happy to participate. And I was like, no, keep doing that.
Oh man, well, and you followed right in his footsteps with your 6 kids.
Well, yeah, we have a beautiful herd of kids that all look like their mom, so it worked out in our house.
Really?
No, yeah, they're good kids, and she has dominant genes, but it's a good thing for all of these kids.
One of the questions we hope to ask everybody in this series is, do you have a crazy or wild race or training experience to share that would surprise people?
Yes. So if you continue to follow the Clayton YouTube series, at some point or another you'll come across our Hobble Creek workout, where Coach loves to send us up a canyon, and it's just this long, gradual uphill tempo. And Ed loves it. But there are records for this tempo, not just on Strava. There's a very, it matters what you run on this tempo. And I remember running, and he'll often stagger us a little bit. So sometimes he used to start the slower group first, so that the faster group would have someone to chase and the slower group would have someone to see partway through this long uphill tempo. I remember one time we were going up this hill and we cared about how fast we could run this race, or this workout, right? But it's a race. And I was running with I was running with a teammate named Connor Peliquin, and he was having the Hobble Creek of his life. And we come around a corner, and there is a massive herd of cattle. And I just stopped. I stopped my watch, and I just stopped. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. There are so many cows in the middle of the road. They were herding them down the canyon. And Connor, who was just behind me, just keeps running, and he starts clapping his hands and yelling, and these cows just part, and he runs right through them. And I'm watching these ranchers as their cow just like up the mountains, right? As Connor was not going to have his workout affected. And then we continue to go, and somehow the first group had gotten through that, and we started catching up to this first group. And I remember I was coming up on Dallin Farnsworth, and then I noticed there's a cow up on this cliff above Dallin, and I started to say, Dallin, as this cow's stepping, and I'm watching this cliff crumble, and then this cow falls like probably 15 feet onto the road just behind Dallin, hits the road and just like pops back up and starts running down. And I was like, I almost watched Dallin get crushed by a cow. And so this cow run up Hobble Creek. Hobble Creek doesn't have cows on it most of the time, but this was a crazy
that
workout.
Is wild. He literally could have died.
Yeah.
He could have gotten crushed by a cow.
How much does a cow weigh?
A lot.
That is wild.
More than a cross-country runner.
You know, you look up like how many deaths by this or that. Like, there's some random statistic about like vending machine deaths each year. It's like, what's the number of cow deaths from falling off a cliff? That's
I like
so
that athlete
wild.
mindset though of like, I got the best work of my life going on. Like, I can't just stop.
I can't stop for these cows.
And they're looking at the cows are looking at him like, this is a crazed animal. It's coming through. Like,
wild.
Gotta give him space.
Ooh, that's good. Jared, what do you think about the fact that for the 2028 trials, what they've done is they've taken it back to 2016, and if you qualified for the Olympics in 2016, you get that automatic qualifier. They only took it back to 2016, but then, you know, we're pulling like Shalane and all these other people who have been retired for a little while now. What do you think about that? Is that fun?
Yeah, it is fun. It's interesting, and it's not unprecedented. In fact, I didn't know about this until just recently. You know, I was on the committees within USA Track and Field that would sort of decide stuff around the Olympic trials, where it's being hosted, what the criteria are, things like that, to recommend to the board for a number of years, and I've been uninvolved in that for about the last year. And so I was shocked that they had this type of provision in there, but it's kind of fun. It gives, I think, from a PR, if I can try to be as objective as I can, being one of those 2016 athletes that just got an auto, I do think it gives media and PR and things like that an opportunity to have something to talk about. And I hope these athletes, like Meb, like Shalane, decide to participate in this race, because it tells a cool story about the heritage of what we're doing, and presents, kind of a unique opportunity and platform for some exposure for the sport, and some connectivity with these athletes who are young and aspiring, and some of us that are sunsetting.
Yes, I hope they all do too. Like, what are the chances that we're going to get all these people to come out to run it? I hope so.
I hope so.
You're certainly running.
I'll start my pressure play. I think it ought to be a group effort here.
Start getting some group texts out. Be like, hey, I'm 2016 too. I'm going.
Yeah, like, we'll be there.
Tell me though, your mindset with like your career right now. What's going on?
Well, it's a work in progress, and going back to the UK for my MBA and having an experience is part of setting up that next phase. but I'm not ready to be done running yet. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's a number of years ago, and so I'm kind of on this journey of figuring out my health at the same time as I'm negotiating a sunsetting athletic career. But I have wonderful support, and when it came time to renegotiate with Saucony, who's been my title partner for my entire professional career, my conversation with Ted went something like, hey, I may be retiring soon. And he just said, I don't care. We'd love to work with you for another 4 years. And we're excited about what we can do together, whether you retire or not. And so, and it's not, and Saucony's been my anchor, but it's not just Saucony that has had sort of that mentality with the support of me and in the sport, and how we're going to leverage, being an ambassador for healthy aspects of living built around sport. And so I have opportunity, and I have some elbow space to sort of figure out what's next and how I want to have an impact. But it certainly leaves the door open for running. And as soon as I moved back from Oxford, I came and I told Coach, hey, I think I want to do a fall marathon. And Coach said, I think maybe a spring marathon, but let's do a half this fall. And so okay. I'm going to run a half in Philadelphia in November. I'm going to try to be fit for it, and then we'll kind of see what happens from there. But I don't think I need the sport professionally to be happy. But I do think there's a couple of things still for me to explore with myself, and for the sake of many other endurance athletes out there that struggle with autoimmune disorders, I think there's a reason for me to try to figure out how to perform at a high level despite setbacks, and maybe help others do the same.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's my sense with athletes at your level is it's as much about keeping that sense of discovery and, like things left to explore and try and learn to stay in the moment, as much as it is about like boxes to check.
Absolutely.
Once you lose that, people tend to. One thing we're trying to ask everyone we interview is sending our minds forward to that 28 trials, wherever it is, yet to be announced. Can you imagine crossing the finish line and any sort of like signature move, what you'll do with your hands, any way of, commemorating the moment? What do you think that will be like for you?
I don't know. It's going to be, it would be a lot of gratitude. I think something that I learned in the 2016 trials was how motivating it is to be who I am because of so many wonderful people around me, and that became a powerful motivator to going out and doing my best. I think that gratitude is better shown than said sometimes, and I think living our best is a good way to say thanks to those that have made our potential the best that it can be. And so I think that finish line in 2028, God willing, would be one of a lot of gratitude. So I don't know, something like prayer hands, yeah. or I love yous to the crowd, or something like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, you're already famous for being celebrating the finish lines, And
it better be good, right?
We're big. Yeah. We're
Peter,
NBC will take note.
I know that's kind of our sign-off question, and if you asked this while I was putting soccer cleats on one of my kids, did we ask the question, which is what I really want to know from you, Jared, is what do you hope to pass on to this next generation of marathoners coming up?
I think my personal, at my core, what I think my calling in this life to do is to help those around me just be the best version of themselves. And I'm driven by that, and I think I've been blessed with some experiences that helped me to do that, and so as a part of that, I would love to see the next generation of marathoners embrace this idea of being the best version of themselves. And I mean that both in terms of marathon running and as a well-rounded individual. And so I want to see them do that, because I think that sport carries a pretty powerful platform of being able to get out there and propagate whatever message you want to propagate. And we can choose to use that platform as something to really send out great messages, or we can use that platform however we want. And I think that I don't know. I want to see people getting out of bed, ready to become the best version of themselves, and motivated to and excited by that. And I think this next generation of marathoners has the platform and the capacity in a sport that's growing in its fan base to do that, even better than any of us have done it in the past.
Okay, I have to just ask though, do you think you'll coach when you retire? Because I just feel like you'd be a really good coach.
I love coaching. In fact, I'm coaching my daughter's soccer team this afternoon. So I love aspects of coaching, and but I also think that we don't have to be a coach to be a coach, and
Totally.
Kind of in the same sense that leadership is a choice, and I think so. Yes, I will be a coach, but will it be my profession? I don't know.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jared Ward, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys are
This
awesome.
is really wonderful.